Hello. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning, depending on where you are zooming in from today. Welcome, welcome. This session is being recorded, FYI. If you're comfortable, we'd love to, as always, see your faces on camera. We'd love to build some community here today. We're going to give it a quick minute to let folks filter into the Zoom room. We're so excited to have you all joining us today, especially during one of the busiest, if not most busy time of the year for everyone in higher ed. So we so appreciate this time that we get to spend together. We also hope you all are having a great start to the term or quarter. And are probably deep in welcoming new students and continuing students back on campus. So let's get started. My name is Hayne from TheDream.Us. I'm based in New York, and on behalf of the TheDream.Us team, would like to welcome everyone to our first TheDream.Us Partner College Power Hour, aka PC Power Hour. You see our beautiful logo here on the screen that was created by our colleague Melanie. This is a new monthly series and informal forum dedicated to you, our partner colleges. Each Power Hour will consist of two parts. So the first half will focus on TheDream.Us, us sharing timely supports and information on how to best support our scholars and undocumented student success. And then the second half will be a Q&A for you to ask any and all questions. Doesn't even have to be related to the content that is going to be shared in the first half. So just taking a moment to reflect, we have now awarded over 8,000 scholarships across the country. We have over 3,000 graduates. I'm just going to say that one more time, 3,000 graduates. Everyone on this call has been a part of that journey. I just want to take a moment to celebrate this incredible milestone that couldn't have happened without everyone on this call. And as our scholar and alumni community continues to grow, we've heard increasingly from you about the importance of ensuring that our partner colleges feel supported and connected in doing this work. So we've also heard that since our workshop on advising scholars through renewals that we did in early August, that our partner college staff and liaisons, some of y'all have been connecting with one another across the country via LinkedIn, sharing promising practices and learning from one another, which is amazing. And also brings us to another one of our key objectives for these Power Hours, which is to build community. So please continue to share your information in the chat, introduce yourselves, which partner college you're coming from, connect with one another. And we will be sharing in just a little bit, a little more about our plans to foster this partner college community more intentionally. So there's going to be more to come on that front, but we want to start building spaces where you all feel supported and are getting the information needed to do this very important work. So coming back to the Power Hours, starting in next week's Partner College Weekly, we'll provide the fall schedule for all of our upcoming Power Hour sessions with Zoom links. No registration will be needed. Zoom links will also be sent by our comms guru, Saad, I see her on this call, on the morning of each Power Hour. So similar to today, you'll get an email directly to your inbox reminding you of the Power Hour with the link to join. For today, our session will focus on addressing FAQs and troubleshooting the enrollment verification report process since we are in EVR season. We're also going to share best practices for onboarding new scholars and where to go to get your TheDream.Us questions answered. And then we'll move on to the Q&A. So please feel free to add your questions, comments, suggestions as they come up in the chat. We also have our EVR experts, Elena and Camilla, on the line who will try to answer the questions real time in the chat, or Melanie will raise your questions during the Q&A session as well. So feel free to start adding those right away in the chat. And then finally, I'd like to introduce Chris Aviles, our Senior Program Manager of Partner College and Scholar Supports, and Melanie Butron, Program Manager for College and Career Programs, who will be facilitating these Power Hour sessions and delivering programming for you, our partner colleges, moving forward. So with that, I'll hand it off to you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Hayne. I want to also welcome everyone. This is so exciting for our first Partner College Power Hour. This is really exciting, and hope that we are engaging with our communities and building this community We have a couple of items on the agenda, so let's jump right into it. So we first want to talk about the EVRs. And so I want to make sure that we're all sort of on the same page. Our EVR queens, Elena and Camila, have done an amazing job of putting together a training session and really walking through the entire EVR process and how to submit that. So we didn't want to be redundant and sort of reiterate that. Hopefully you guys have all watched the video. It's 5 minutes, it's straight to the point. There are screenshots. It's just a great sort of tool to use to viewing and being able to submit the EVR process. We wanted to use this session to really sort of pinpoint certain items on the EVR where we know that people might need a little bit more clarification and troubleshooting in order to successfully submit the EVR without having any sort of complications or issues. So we've broken that down into 2 areas. The first is the cost of attendance. And if you've already viewed the video, you'll notice that is the first part of the EVR process that you need to complete. From a PC perspective, when I used to do the EVRs, I found the cost of attendance was not something that I had knowledge of. I didn't have those numbers because I was a scholar advisor, and it wasn't information that I usually would work with. So sometimes I would go in to do it, didn't have the information, and then I had to stop to sort of like figure out what those numbers were. So just as a personal note, I would really advise, if you're not the financial aid liaison completing the EVR, you may want to connect with your financial aid office in advance of completing the EVR to make sure that you are able to complete the cost of attendance that is required for the EVR process. In addition to that, right, that top section requests that you submit your email information, right? So there are different liaison, different people on campus. We want to make sure that the person who is submitting the EVR indicates their email address. This is really, really important. Please do not put in any other person's email address, because part of this process does require you to confirm that the EVR went through, and you will receive a confirmation email. That email will go to the email address that is provided on this in this field. You can add more than one person in that field. You would need to sort of follow the regular guidelines of sending an email and sort of just separating each email address with a colon in order for that to be able to go to multiple people on your campus. In addition to that, not only will the confirmation for the EVR go to these email addresses, but also once the process is complete and you get a report of the distribution of those funds, that's the email address that will be used in order to receive that report as well. So again, please make sure that you're putting the correct email address on that field. The other field that we feel that sometimes our PCs can have a little bit of trouble with is the semester and quarter field. I think people get into the habit of sort of just writing in like fall semester or spring semester or summer session. And that will create an error message when you go in to submit your EVR. For that specific field, we are literally just looking for the word semester or quarter session, depending on where we are in the EVR in the academic year. Any other variation of that will result in getting an error message in your EVR report once submitted. The term name is also something that corresponds to a number. And so Elena and Camila have put together a little term index box, which can be found in columns F and G of the EVR and corresponds a number to each of the terms that is represented. We are looking for that specific number. Again, any variation aside from that number will result in the EVR being rejected and you having to resubmit. So it's a little bit tedious, but we're hoping that this session will help sort of, again, identify some of these pitfalls and allow you to submit your EVR correctly in a first shot so that you don't have to go back and refix some of these issues. On part of the cost of attendance, there is a room and board section that needs to be completed. We know that there is an on-campus field, and we know that some of our PCs do not actually offer on-campus housing. And so there may be a question in terms of, well, what do I put on there? There's no real number for that because we don't offer on-campus housing. In those situations, because something does need to be put into that box so that it doesn't get rejected, we advise that you submit the same amount that you would submit for the student who is living with their parents. And that will, again, sort of make sure that that box is filled out correctly and does not get an error. The only box in that sort of top section that can be left blank is the fees for and health insurance. If you don't have that number, if there is no health insurance offered by your campus, that you can actually leave blank. Okay, so now moving on to the second part of that EVR process, which is the individual scholar data. And so for this, as you may have seen from the video, only scholars that are eligible to receive the scholarship will show up on the EVR. So if you had a scholar who may have lost eligibility for the scholarship program, they will not show up on the EVR. Please, please do not manually input them. That will cause an error and will cause your EVR to be rejected. All of the fields need to be completed. So you will see all the students who are eligible for the scholarship on your campus show up and populate on the EVR. Even if the student is not enrolled for a particular semester, please input the number 0 for those fields that require either a tuition amount, a credit amount, anything of that sort cannot be left blank and needs to have some numeric value in there. You can please just input 0. Do not delete the student because we still will need to have that information for managing the scholarship purposes on our end. You will also see that the sheet is color coded and there are some gray cells. There's information in those cells that we also need on our end in order to associate the student with our scholarship program. Please do not delete those cells. Please do not change any data information in those cells as it will cause issues on the back end. Only the fields that are highlighted in yellow are the fields that you should be able to submit information for. Column L, current term enrollment status, is something that I personally also had some difficulties in when I was submitting my own EVRs because it is very text sensitive. There are 6 different statuses: full-time, part-time, graduated, not enrolled, leave of absence, and dropped out. Each of these have to be implemented precisely as they are written below in this PowerPoint and as they are listed in the EVR itself. If you miss the hyphen in full-time or part-time, that will cause an error and you would need to sort of fix that and resubmit. So in order to avoid sort of having to replicate the process, again, make sure that you are completing that field exactly as it is written below. This is going a little bit more into the weeds of the EVR process, right? And so as we've stated before, as it's stated in the training video, only the students who are eligible to receive this scholarship in this particular semester will be populated on the EVR report. If they are not eligible, then you will not see them on this report. So There is a step-by-step process. You don't necessarily need to complete each one of these steps. This is kind of a, if A situation, then B. So if you are completing your enrollment verification report and you have a scholar that you think should be listed on the report but isn't, your first step will be to check your PC Scholar report to confirm their eligibility. Again, Elena and Camila have recently added a column. It is, I believe, column AF on the PC Scholar report that specifies specifically what the eligibility is for each scholar. So if a student has maxed out on their award, if they're timed out, if they've lost eligibility for any one of the other reasons, you will easily be able to identify that by going to the scholar report, looking at column AF, and seeing what the student's current eligibility is for this semester. And that will be a way for you to sort of verify whether the student should be on the enrollment report or not. If by chance the scholar does not show up on your scholar report, but you have had a conversation with the scholar and they've informed you that they have successfully renewed their scholarship this last round, then you can proceed to step 2, which would be to advise the scholar to complete the request form on the ITIS portal, making sure that their partner college is updated and that the funds are listed to go to that particular school. That will most likely fix any of these situations in which you will not see the scholar on your scholar report. Let me sort of also emphasize that the request form is only for our national scholars. That is the only group of scholarships that have access to the request form at this time through their ISTS portal. Opportunity scholars can still also make the same request, but they would be reaching out directly to ITIS in the customer email, scholar email associated for that. If the scholar checks their portal and they come back and they tell you, my partner college is correct, I'm still not knowing why they're not showing up on the PC report, then that is sort of like a worst case scenario, and you can proceed on to step 3 and reach out directly to Elena and Camila at the emails listed here. I believe my colleagues are going to also be putting it on the chat so that you have it for your records. All right, so you've completed the EVR, everything is in place, everything is good to go. You're almost done, you're ready to submit. The first part of that process is uploading the EVR into the system. Again, all of the screenshots and processes can be reviewed more deeply in the 5-minute video that is sent out. One thing that I want to note is when you upload the EVR into the system, you will get a successful or unsuccessful sort of notification. That is only for the upload. So I want to make sure that you guys are sort of like paying attention to this. Just because it says that the file was successfully uploaded into the system doesn't necessarily mean that we're done and that it's being processed and that you're good to go. It just means that the upload was sent into the system. The second part of the process is that confirmation email that I mentioned before, right? So in that email field that we submitted, that we filled out earlier, that will get a confirmation email letting you know whether your EVR was successfully completed or has some errors that need to be addressed before it can be processed. So if you get a successful email, you're done, you're good. Call it a day, go have something to eat and just hang out. If you get an unsuccessful email, then there's some things that you might need to sort of fix on the EVR and resubmit. Your first step would be to open up that email. There will be an attachment on that email. Once you open up the attachment, this is sort of a screenshot of what that would look like. And the attachment is actually very detailed. If you see from the image below, it actually tells you exactly where the error exists, right? So here it says row 13, invalid enrollment status provided. So that gives you a destination, where to look at the EVR for that mistake and how to correct it. Once those are all corrected, you would sort of go back to the upload system and resubmit and follow these 2 steps again until you get that successful email. All right, so this is another question that sort of might come up. What if I have already submitted my EVR and we find that there was a student that was originally missing, maybe they transferred late and they didn't update the information, or for whatever reason, we submitted information that was inaccurate for the student in the EVR. Once a EVR has been submitted successfully, so it has gone through and it's in the system for processing, another EVR cannot be submitted. The system will not accept it. It will be rejected because it already has that initial EVR being processed for this term. If it's just something that you identify quickly within a day, within 2 days, we'll say even within the first week of submitting the EVR, you can contact Elena and Camila. Again, their emails are here directly, and they will be able to manually fix the EVR on our end at that point in time to make any adjustments needed to the EVR. And again, no additional EVR will have to be submitted. They'll be able to manually manage that individual situation or individual situations that have occurred. After 1 week, the EVR will be just so deep into the process that a manual process will not be available at that point. And we will need the EVR to actually be fully processed. And so when I say fully processed, that means that the EVR has been completed and the funds have been actually dispersed to the individual colleges. Once that has been sort of completed and executed, that will leave an opening for you to resubmit a new EVR with any of these additional changes or updates that you would need to make for any particular students. In this case, you can delete all of the students who have been successfully already processed in the first PVR. We would only need the students that you are submitting an adjustment for or that information was never received for. So you can delete everything else. If you just have 1 student, only 1 student will be on that EVR. And that is obviously all of the following information for that particular student. Now, we think from the video, from the instruction guide that pairs with the video, and hopefully through this troubleshooting session, that you'll be able to successfully submit your EVRs or have any of your questions answered throughout the process. In a worst case scenario that you are still having issues submitting your EVR, for any other troubleshooting issues, again, you can contact our EVR queens, Elena and Camila, at their email addresses, and just let them know that you're still having some issues uploading or submitting your EVRs. One of the helpful hints that they have sort of indicated that makes it easier for them to identify what the issue is sending screenshots. So if you're getting an error message, if you're getting some kind of block on your end where you cannot submit your EVR, please take a screenshot of that and include it in your email when emailing them. I think that concludes our EVR process or our EVR portion of this presentation. And so we're going to move on to summer payments and do not cancel or drop service indicators or holds. So just as a note, the majority of our summer EVRs have been processed and wired to our partner colleges. Roughly speaking, there are about 11 still that may have had issues and had some troubleshooting things that had to be done and are still in process. We hope and anticipate having that cleared within the next few weeks. For those of you who have already received your wire transfer, just a note, please make sure that the funds have been posted to the individual students' accounts and that their balances have been cleared so that they're not having any issues with their accounting or any other processes at your college. If you are one of these EVRs that are still pending for this summer, we would advise that you make sure that the scholar is not penalized with any late fees or hold on their accounts. We had a conversation with a student just recently who actually had their accounts go into collections because the funds were still outstanding. So we want to make sure that our PCs, our scholar advisors, our financial aid liaisons are really working with our bursars offices and our financial aid offices to make sure that scholars are not being penalized, that they're not incurring late fees, that they're not getting holds on their accounts, and that they're not sort of running into additional issues with going through their regular college process because of these outstanding payments. So having an open dialogue with your bursar's office to making sure that these do not impede the student's progress is really, really helpful. On that same note, this is a great time to place do not cancel or drop service indicators for your scholars' records. That is usually the biggest concern our students have at this time is my bill is still pending, it's still out there, but I want to make sure that my classes don't get dropped, right? So having these service indicators on the student's record just to ensure that their courses are not dropped and that they're going to be able to proceed with their classes this semester, despite having an outstanding balance, either for the summer session or even for the current fall semester. This is something that I think is very key to sort of managing this process as well at the scholar level, is really having that communication with your scholars and letting them know that you are managing this from the PC side of this and that their courses will not be dropped, that you're managing the payment, that you're working with us on getting their tuition covered and paid out, because students definitely have anxiety regarding these issues. And so having that line of communication, reassuring them their courses are not going to be dropped, they're not going to have any kind of penalized actions against them for the outstanding payments. And from the college side, from the PC side, ensuring them that they are okay and that the process is being managed really sort of alleviates a lot of the tension from the scholars and a lot of the communication that might be incited from them not having those reassurances. If you are still having issues receiving your summer EVR payments and you think that it should have been processed or whatnot, or even after the next few weeks, again, the remaining 11 should be cleared. If you have not received your EVR payments by that point, your next step will be to contact ITIS portal. The TheDream.Us support link is below and will also be on the chat box right now in order to get an update on your EVR summer payments and when they would most likely be issued payment to your campus. Moving on to the next big piece of this, which is onboarding new scholars. So this is an exciting time, right? It's the first few weeks of the semester starting. We have a bunch of new scholars coming in, transitioning to your campus, either from high school or from other colleges. I'm gonna make a personal plug. Orientations are a great way to introduce new scholars to the TheDream.Us program, but also to your campus and how the program is run on your campus. It is something that we also find is a best practice for serving this population. And it is great to do either in person or even online if, whatever works best for you at this point in time. But it is a great way for the scholars to get grounded as they are incoming to your campus in knowing that they have a community, being advised of who the point people are on their campus, who their scholar advisor is, who their career liaison is, their mental health liaison. I want to give a shout out to Denise at John Jay. I was at their campus during our welcome session, and right after the general national welcome session that we held, Denise had her own personal session specifically for John Jay students, which gave the students an opportunity to meet each other. They did icebreakers, they connected, they shared their information, they basically started to build that community already. And in addition to that, Denise had put together a handout for all of the reference information for them on that campus. So where to find out her information, the Center for Immigration Rights and Resources there, who their liaisons were. I believe Mentally just put a copy of the PDF that Denise handed out at that session in case anyone wants to look it through and maybe model that for their own campuses and sort of identify some of the information that is on that for their own campuses. So whether you're doing it in an orientation session or you just want to put it together and mail it out to students, that is a great way for students to have a reference point in terms of who to go to on their campuses, right? In addition to that, you want to inform scholars of what are the supporting resources specifically on your campus. Obviously, academic resources should be involved in that, right? Any tutoring centers, writing centers, any other sort of academic support programs, library programs, laptop loan programs that may be offered from your college should be included in that information so that students know and have these resources, where to get access to these resources on your campus. But I also want to encourage you to think outside of just academics and really include even emergency support programs that is offered by your college. Whether your campus has a food pantry that students may be able to have access to, if there are any travel or transportation programs, food card programs, emergency support programs that they may be eligible for applying to and getting access to. We realize that academic sort of success cradles both these academic resources, but these emergency support services for our scholars and helping them in their personal lives in order to help them focus on their academics. Another information that is really helpful for students to know, again, sort of feeding into alleviating some of that anxiety, is knowing when and how their tuition is paid and when their stipends will be distributed. So having that information in terms of, okay, this is the EVR process, we will, from the campus perspective, we'll submit the EVR. I want to say roughly about a month is our turnaround time, Elena. You could sort of correct me if I'm wrong on that. But about a month after the EVR is submitted, we hope to turn around and have the funds redirected back to your college. And then again, sort of informing students a little bit about that process and when they should expect their tuition to be cleared and their stipends to be distributed. All while letting them know that even as it is outstanding, they will still not be penalized because you are working with the offices on your campus to make sure that there are no issues with their accounts. Another little fun thing that is on your way, Saad and Gabby from our team have been working with creating some Dream.Us swag. We have some cool bags and pens and stickers. Some of you have signed up to get some of our swag for your new scholars. That is on its way. And I think it is a great way, an introduction to sort of building some of this community with our new scholars. If you are having an orientation, it's a great sort of giveaway to have out for your sessions. It gives the students a sense of belonging and having sort of like a real sort of material item where they can sort of embody that they are a part of a program on your campus and a community on your campus. It also makes it kind of fun to have the giveaways and sort of be able to sort of have students sort of receive these. You can do this in an orientation session. You can do these on one-on-one sessions with your scholars. But it's a way to, again, sort of just increase the engagement of connecting with your scholars and building this community on your campus. So that is on its way. Saad and Gabby will be in communications with you guys regarding on when that should be shipped out and delivered to your campuses. Now connecting with how to get my questions answered from TheDream.Us. So as you already know or may know, ISTS is our management company. So they really sort of manage a lot of the logistics and admin pieces of our scholarship program, whether that be application processes or more particularly payments to the individual campuses. So if you have any questions regarding technical issues with your ITIS portal, the status of your payments, any particular questions regarding a break-in enrollment or transfer status for a particular scholar, you can reach out to, again, the dream.us _support at applyISTS.com email address for students. It was already listed on the chat box and you could also grab it from there. One note on the break-in enrollment status, again, you can find this information in your PC report. It's that AF column that we mentioned before. So you probably want to check there first, and you most likely will be able to get your question answered just by looking at that report. If not, if you check that and you still can't get your question answered, then you can definitely email the ITIS help desk. The next component that I want to sort of put a little bit more focus on is our PC Hub. And the website address is also indicated there and will be in the chat box for you guys to also collect from. I really want to put a lot of focus on the PC Hub. We are really looking to make this our centralized area for partner colleges to get any inquiries answered, to get all of the information that you need as it pertains to the scholarship, and really be your one-stop shop for any scholarship inquiries or any information, best practices, promotional kits, partnership toolkits, videos of any trainings that we've done. Currently, right now, you will see that we have a partnership toolkit on that website, which contains the program guides for each the national and opportunity scholarship programs. Those guides have all of the information, and I want to say probably would answer maybe 90 to 95% of your questions for the scholarship programs themselves, as well as our PC directory and some other tutorials. We have our promotional kit that can be used for recruitment from our admissions office, from your admissions of offices or any other offices that work on recruiting scholar applications for your program at your campus, and the Effective Practices Toolkit, which has some information in terms of how to manage the specific population on your campus and some of the best practices that have come out known to us either from our PCs or for some of the literature that has come up with working specifically with undocumented students. Now, this is currently what is on the PC Hub. I do want to note that we are working right now in revamping this a little bit. And so some changes will be made within the next couple of months. We will keep you posted as to what those changes are and what you will be able to find on the PC Hub. We are looking to make sure that it is easy, the information is easily accessible, digestible, and that it is going to be a quick search for our PCs and being able to have their questions answered. So again, want to just sort of highlight the PC Hub is something that we're currently working on, and we'll have a lot of development on so that the answers that you are looking for will be easily accessible from that hub. The other two components are your Dream.Us relationship manager. So each of you have an RM that works with your specific campus. And so this also is a point of contact for you to be able to connect with and communicate with. Again, I want to reiterate the PC Hub should have most of the information that you need. But in the exceptional cases where the PC Hub doesn't have the answers that you're looking for, or specifically where you have a student that is requesting a break in enrollment, is transferring, is seeking some other type of service, the first place that they should be looking for is really that request form that we noted in the beginning of the presentation. They should be going on to their portals and completing the request form for those practices. Now, having done that, if there is additional information that needs to be accompanied for those specific cases, if there is a particular case that you would want to reiterate to your RM regarding a student situation, if they're looking for a break in enrollment or anything else, if there's an exceptional circumstance that the student is going through that was not able to be relayed in the request form itself, you can reach out to your RM and just let them know the student has already completed the request form or they've already emailed ISTS, but this is some additional information that I think will be helpful in processing that request. On the flip note of that, you may also receive an inquiry from your RM in these cases where they've received the request form and may be wanting to reach out to you for some additional information regarding that student's request. In addition to that, you can also sort of reach out to your RM for effective practices in supporting scholars. If a scholar cannot complete, their scholarship or their term, if you're looking for updates on the PC directory, or looking for any information on in-state tuition or state aid policies in your particular state. Something that we are also very excited about, and Hayne mentioned at the intro of the presentation, is something that we are developing, which is a partnership with LinkedIn and developing a LinkedIn group with specifically for our PCs. And so this will be a closed group just for our partner colleges across the country. And we are looking to create this platform at the national level so that all of our partner colleges will be able to share resources and learning, share the effective practices that they've engaged in on their own campuses that others may want to model, and really start to develop a national discourse in supporting undocumented students and helping each of you increase and develop your own pedagogy for working with this population. So it is something that we're really excited about. It is in process. We want to hopefully kick it off within the next semester, if not by the very latest, hopefully this spring. But this is something that we are looking to put together as another platform to create a community amongst our professionals and our colleagues and our PCs to be able to ask questions and get answers to questions. But again, just creating a dialogue for working with this specific population at a national level. So with that, I think we've closed out the presentation part of the first PC Power Hour. We want to open up the next session as a open forum for people to ask their questions regarding anything that was discussed or any other questions that you might have that are not particular to the presentation itself, or feedback or communication. All feedback is welcome at this point, and we would like to just open it up. So I don't know if we have any specific questions that have already come up in the chat box, Melanie, if you want to sort of reach out and sort of maybe reiterate some of that, or we can start just taking questions from our PC.
Yeah, so let's start taking questions. All of them have been answered in the chat. Happy to kind of go over them again. In the meantime, I know Jeanette has her hand raised. So if you want to go and ask your question and get off mute, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much for hosting this. I have a question regarding a student that wants to or is currently attending another institution, a community college that is a partner college, but will be finishing her bachelor's degree with us. Is there a specific process, a link that she could follow? I know she said that she reached out to ISTS regarding that. Fall started already, so I just want to make sure that she's not getting any balances and that she'll be able to use her scholarship.
Sure. So that is so this is a national scholarship.
Oh, I'm still getting used to them, but I believe so, if that would qualify.
Okay. So we have two scholarships. We have our national scholarship and our opportunity scholarship. If this is a student in the national scholarship program, their first step will be to go into their portal, right, their ITIS portal, and identify that request form, and make sure that they are formally submitting the request form to change their partner college to your campus. That will trigger what needs to be done on the back end so that the student will come up on your EVR and you'll be able to submit the payment for the student's tuition and stipend. If I'm missing anything, Elena and Camila, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, the other thing that I was going to say, Janet, I can always check and see if they let us know of the transfer, basically when they completed the renewal form. So if you just in the chat box, if you want to put the scholar's name in there real quick, I can take a look at my reports and see if I've already got that info.
Thank you so much. Yes. Okay. And one more, I know there was a timeline regarding the second round of opening the renewals that were declined and just incomplete. Should they be looking out for a decision by like next week or by the end of this week?
By the end of this week, and I will actually have their statuses updated either late today or tomorrow. So you'll be able to see that in the PC Scholar report no later than tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Oh, yes, there is one in the chat from Nayeli saying, regarding EVRs, which support staff team member typically does the submitting of the EVR, financial aid liaison or scholar advisor? Is there a preference?
I mean, I used to manage the EVRs on my campus when I was on the PCs and I was the scholar advisor. So I think it doesn't, and again, Elena, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for our purposes, it doesn't make a difference if it's the scholar advisor or the financial aid liaison. I think campuses should probably be managing that on their own sort of like preference. I think it sometimes does make it a little bit easier if it is someone in the financial aid office, because again, some of that cost of attendance information definitely needs to be sort of inputted. And it probably makes sense for that sort of role to be completing the EVR and in relation to like in-state tuition, and if the scholar is collecting any other additional scholarship information, which also needs to be completed on that component. But I think we do really leave it on the campuses to make those sort of like determinations on their end. But from my perspective in being on the PC side, a lot of that information does already reside in the financial aid office. So again, it's up to you guys, but it does sort of lean closer to the wheelhouse of the financial aid advisor or liaison.
Okay, we have a raised hand from Joe Posada Triana. Go ahead.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate this this PC hour is very extremely helpful, especially this is my first time in this role as an advisor. But for clarification, I know for when we talked about the EVR, the Excel sheet, right? The yellow, everything that's highlighted yellow is things that we're filling out, filling in, and ensuring that nothing is left blank. And I know that there was a comment about the gray area, for sure not to delete any data that's on there. However, if there is, for example, I'm looking at a student right now, we don't have their college ID on there, it's okay to fill the data, just don't delete it or leave it blank. Leave it blank.
Leave it
Okay.
blank. Anything in the gray section, don't touch.
Perfect. Okay.
The one piece that is not automated in the EVR section is us catching college IDs. So if you change it in both columns, we'll never know that it needs to be updated.
Perfect. Okay. So then just on the current college student ID, just add it there, leave the gray alone. Perfect.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, next up we have Chris. Go ahead.
Chris, you're muted. We still can't hear you, Chris. Sorry. You can type in your question if you want in the chat box and we might be able to answer, but unfortunately we can't hear you. We can take any other questions while Chris is typing away.
So Chris, I'm just getting some questions here directly that I think might be great for the group to hear. So the questions come up, and Chris, you can speak to this because you're familiar with CUNY. Is there a way to get the stipends processed first? Elena, you might want to jump in on that.
Yeah. So you're gonna get me in trouble, Hayne. So it really sort of depends on your college and your campus. I think from our perspective, and when I was a PC, we actually did sort of a trial run with Elena, where we did do the stipends sort of first, and did the tuition-based EVRs like at the end of the academic year, right? So it was sort of like a kind of at the end of the spring semester, because I think it made sense for us in terms of the way state funding comes in, to be able to do it at that later point. And so from our perspective, I want to sort of just like leave that with Elena in terms of us processing the just the stipends and then the tuitions at a later point, so that way students have their stipends at an earlier point, which I understand that the reasoning behind that, for them to be able to purchase books and have those funds for personal uses. One thing that I encountered was that there was pushback from the PC side. So we were able to do it that one round, and then the college decided that they did not want to wait a year in order to bill that tuition at a later point. So I think there's some dichotomy there in terms of figuring out whether your campus is okay with receiving the tuition and payments at a later date, and processing those stipends. A lot of times they are a little reluctant to give the student money when they have an outstanding balance with the college. So that's one aspect of it that you want to make sure that you are connecting with your campus and making sure that that's okay. And then for the other component, I need to sort of just refer to Elena in terms of our processes and how that can be done.
So since we went to the new sort of EVR system where payments are being calculated automatically and not manual, except during the summer, that is still a manual process. I would have to know that up front because the system is going to start trying to calculate everything. And so it does make it a little difficult because then when we go to put through, so it would still have to be a manual process for us. We would have to get rid of payments that the system's trying to calculate. And then once we do get the actual tuition EVR, it's also going to try to add stipends on there again. So it's going to be a very sort of messy potentially process. But if you do have specific questions around that, I just reach out to me and I will work with you one-on-one to see what it is that we can do on that.
Okay, so Chris did write it out in the chat. He said, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I need to run to another meeting. Just wanted to thank you all for this new initiative to get us all together and the continued support that we have received navigating our students' return to campus this year. So more of like a kudos comment from Chris. There is a question from Carmen Zavala asking, what is a typical time frame for receipt of summer funds?
The summer this year has been delayed, and a lot of that is on me because of the fact that the summer process is still very much manual because we have the renewals taking place at the same time. So unfortunately, I was focused more on getting scholar questions answered as it related to their eligibility to renew this year versus focusing on the summer EVRs. We do have about 22 EVRs that ISTS is currently processing the funds for, and those funds should be wired by Friday at the latest. And then the ones that Chris mentioned at the beginning of the call, which is another 11 that were ones where we were having to troubleshoot issues because the EVRs came in with errors and schools didn't correct the errors, and I was having to figure out what the potential errors were and fixing them myself. So I do have another 11 that will be processed within the next couple of weeks. But outside of that, normally we try to get the EVRs in the summer processed much quicker. This year, it just, for whatever reason, I felt like the amount of questions coming in this year from our scholars and PCs as it related to eligibility was a lot higher than normal. So completely on me for that. So, but like I said, we do have about 22 that are being processed right now, and those funds will go out by Friday.
Elena, I definitely understand and I appreciate that. I had the same thing. We are still really, really behind on everything. So I appreciate the notice.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I think that's a good note to leave on. No more questions in the chat box, and or nobody else has their hand raised. Thank you everyone so much for attending our power hour, and really looking forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you, Chris, for the awesome presentation, and to the rest of the team for answering all the questions and links and stuff like that. So hope to see you all soon, and take care. Have a great rest of the semester.
Bye.
Oh yes, recording and slides will be available in the PC Weekly tomorrow. Thank you, Hayne.